Welcome, cooks, to our first episode of the Cookbook Club for 2025.
Yay!
January, in fact.
Yay!
For the month of January, we are tackling Escoffier, right? He is the OG, right? He developed a lot of things having to do with cooking and restaurants. He is French, so we're going to learn about this cookbook. We are making Poulet Sauté Marigny, which is a chicken sauté marigny. Marigny is an area of France and an area in New Orleans. So that's where the name comes from. Along with that, we're going to be making a Jus Lie, which is a stock reduction. And we are going to be making Pommes de Terre Fondantes, which is a buttery potato. So welcome to the Amy Learns to Cook kitchen. So one of the things about Escoffier is there tends to be recipes and recipes, and he doesn't give exact measurements, and he doesn't give exact times. That didn't come along till Fanny Farmer. He's assuming that you're a chef. So when you're cooking out of this, you have to kind of make some decisions about how you're going to do some things. So in this recipe, read through the recipe thoroughly. This is recipe 3226. In this version of the book, it's on page 387. This book is not under copyright, so it's freely available on the internet. I'll put a link down in the description, and I'll put a link to this hard copy. So it could be a different page, but it is recipe 3226. And reading through that, part of what we're going to need is the stock reduction called a Jus Lie or Jus Lie or whatever, right? I have to admit, this book intimidates the heck out of me, right? So I'm going to do as best I can. Just remember that when you're leaving a comment, I don't speak French and I'm not a chef, right? So I'm going to do the best that we can. So we're going to turn back. And there's a recipe in here, recipe number 58, which is a Jus Lie, a thickened gravy, tarragon flavored. So that's what we're going to be making first. Whoop, whoop. We're going to give it our all, right? So because I'm only using this to deglaze a pan, I'm going to make a half recipe that's in here. This calls for 4.5 cups of stock. I'm just using 2 cups because I'm just doing a deglaze, right?
And we're reducing the tarragon accordingly.
So this is homemade chicken stock. If you want to know how I make my homemade chicken stock, I'll put a link up here and down there, right? So here we go. Escoffier. You think I'm going to do this right, Boo? Probably not.
You're just heating it up and putting some tarragon. How hard can that be?
Tarragon. We're going to put that in here.
Assuming your grocery store carries it, right?
Yeah, it's hard out here. Eric went...
I had to drive to 3 stores, 50 miles round trip.
To get tarragon. So we're going to infuse this tarragon. Unfortunately, Escoffier doesn't tell us how long it takes to infuse that. So we're going to give it a little bit, and then we're going to have to strain this, and we're going to thicken it with a cornstarch slurry. Okay, so this is infused, right? I'm going to go ahead and pour it out and back into the cup. Get those little extra ones out of there. And then I'm going to take this and a little strainer, and I'm going to strain it back in there. I do this when I'm making stuffing for Thanksgiving. I infuse it with herbs. If I'm using commercial stock, I infuse it with herbs. Okay, so we have a little slurry here. Ibu made it. 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and 1/4 cup of water. We're going to go ahead and put this in here.
Cold water.
We're going to go ahead and heat this up. And the slurry is going to start thickening up. It has to reach a boil, though, before it's really going to do that. So it's looking like it's thickened. I don't think you want to thicken this to a gravy because we're going to be using it to deglaze the pan, but it is thickened here. It looks pretty nice. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. We're going to move this to the side and we are going to start on the potatoes. So we are at recipe now 4187, Pommes de Terre Fondantes, right? Which I think just means buttery potatoes, right? Melting potatoes. Melting potatoes. It says, Escoffier, trim the potatoes to a shape of a large elongated olive, rating 3 ounces each. And of course, nowadays, our potatoes look like this, right? How am I going to cut that into a large elongated olive?
Well, you're going to need to cut these things in half to start with. Cut out any rotten areas, and then you can shape them, right?
So you could just cut them into chunks like this. A large elongated olive? How can I do that?
Because olives aren't perfectly round. This is where your artistry skills come in.
Of which I have none.
If you had troubles with last month's cookie dough, this is your redemption if you're lucky.
Does not look like an elongated olive.
Well, you don't want a circle. You want something that's elongated, but that's probably close enough, boo-boo.
It's not an elongated olive.
It's not.
One of the things you could do is this. If you cut this like this, get these extra spots off over here. And you want to cut this so it's straight. That's quite a bit of wasted potato in my book.
It really is.
Just like that. Most people do it as rounded chunks. Okay, next is the green beans. French beans, to be exact. French beans are just a little thinner than green beans. They're a little more delicate, if you could say. Escoffier says, cut them into a diamond shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to snip the ends right here, right? And not 100% sure what he means by a diamond shape. So what I'm going to do is cut them on a bias. So they look like that. Yeah. And we need 4.5 ounces. 4.5 ounces. So we're just going to cut them on a bias. And I'm going to keep cutting until I have 4.5 ounces. So it's time to cook the Pommes de Terre Fondantes. Melting potatoes in butter, right? So we're going to cook this. You want butter, Escoffier? I'm going to give you some butter. I think, don't tell anybody you saw me do this, but this is because I'm inexperienced and I don't want to burn the butter. So we're going to be cooking these slowly in the butter in a shallow pan, assuming saute, until they're softened. Slowly.
But we're trying to use a wide pan so that way they don't stack on top of each other.
Yeah, my potatoes, number one, this is a bad cook, right? Because my potatoes are not all the same size.
So we sliced them into big chunks pretty much. We didn't make them look like elongated olives, so that might be part of the problem. But at least we're not crowding them either.
So we need to cook these slowly, turning them frequently until they're softened. We'll be back. Okay, the potatoes are looking good. Eric cooked them at a really low temp and then raised it a little bit to get that browning going.
My pan was between 250, 300 degrees. I flipped them about once every minute to 2 minutes. I flipped them frequently. That's what the recipe calls for. But towards the end, I cranked the temperature up just under smoking point to get more color on them.
So they are toothpick tender. So just to make this easier for myself, I'm going to take these potatoes out of here temporarily because the Escoffier wants us to remove this spent up butter, and we're going to replace it with some new butter to freshen and bring out the butter flavor. The spent butter may not have the butter flavor in it anymore.
Well, you got bits of a potato. You might have starch. You have a bunch of stuff in there that he doesn't want.
Just going to wipe this out with a paper towel to give us a clean slate here.
You can see the color of that butter, boo-boo. It's kind of dark there.
Yeah, look at this. That is all spent up butter. Eric was asking me, why do you need to replace the butter? Why didn't you just add new butter? But look at it. It's all spent up and
when I was cooking,
not fancy anymore.
When I was cooking at a low medium, it didn't really change the color of stuff much. But I think once you go to a high temperature and you get kind of close to smoking it, then it really changes the color.
Okay, so I'm going to put the potatoes back in here. And I'm going to do this the way Escoffier says to do it because we are cooking his recipe. A lot of times you will see people making these melting potatoes or fondant potatoes or whatever you want to call them, and they leave them like this for the next stage. But Escoffier says flatten them slightly with a fork without breaking them. So I broke that one.
Well, you gotta be careful. Maybe you just bang the fork on it a little versus, putting too much force.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't do it without breaking them.
Well,
I pretty much have broken all of them.
well, just push a little bit, but don't go crazy. Because it's going to have a little give, and then boom. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of a fail.
Well, it probably takes practice. But a lot of people don't do this.
Oh, well, that's what he says to do. Of course, I mangled them. So he doesn't mention any seasoning, and that doesn't go down for me.
No.
So I'm going to give us some seasoning. I find that with a lot of older recipes, that there's just no seasoning.
Usually
some salt in there.
The sooner you can apply salt, the better. But they're going to be sitting at this next stage for a little while, right, Boo-Boo?
Yeah.
So they'll have time to absorb it.
I'm putting some granulated garlic.
Plus the butter is going to... We are using salted butter, so it should have some salt in it, right, Boo?
So yeah, we want a lot of butter in here. I think we're going to put in like half a stick.
No, you're putting in almost a full stick.
Almost a full stick?
Well, do you really think your potatoes lost much weight when they cooked? In other words, is it based off the pre-cooking weight?
I don't know.
We were just under a kilogram, right? We were just under 2 pounds. And it calls for like 3 ounces of butter. So I told Amy, I go, 1 stick should be close enough, maybe a little bit less than a stick.
Ain't playing around with that.
So, well, maybe now that you smashed them, it'll absorb it faster. Who knows?
So we're going to cover this and we're going to set this aside and cook the chicken. Okay, so I have a pan going here. He says to season the chicken, but doesn't tell you what to season it with. And we're going to cook it in butter. You think I should put a little olive oil in there so it doesn't burn?
A little bit. Well, you're trying to color the meat a little bit, right?
Yeah, with color.
So we're not going to have it on low. We're definitely going to have a little heat. So yes, oil will help.
Salt. Doesn't say what to season it with, so I'm going with salt. I'm going with fresh cracked black pepper. I'm going with some granulated garlic. We'll season the other side as soon as we get them in the pan. In the pan they go. Cook the chicken. Season side down. Season side down. Wow. Season side down. Did I go crazy with the butter? It didn't tell you how much.
You pre-trimmed the chicken and you butterflied it.
Yeah, I cut it into cutlets. So I did thin cutlets. Some seasoning. This looks amazing. Basically, chicken braised in butter. And a little granulated garlic. And we need to cook these until they have color. So when that happens, we'll be back. So I got a little bit of brown action going on. I don't want to overcook them because we're putting these suckers in the oven real quick. So Escoffier wants us to put in our green beans. And also he says fresh peas. But I can't get fresh peas around here, particularly in the middle of the winter. So I'm going with frozen peas here. Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to put these in here. Chicky. We're going to put the lid on. This braiser is going in the oven at 350 until this chicken is done and those peas and green beans are heated up. So we'll be back. So the chicken's out of the oven. Ooh. And what I'm going to do is I do need to turn this on because we're going to be deglazing this pan with our Jus Lie. I'm going to take the chicken out.
Do you want to tint the chicken?
This is going to take me a minute. So I tasted this Jus Lie and it has a really strong licoricey tarragon flavor. I think because I'm using it with a chicken stock that's not seasoned, He doesn't call for seasoning this stuff. That's unacceptable to me, right?
Yeah.
It needs salt.
It needs salt, period.
It needs pepper. It needs garlic. I'd like some sauteed onions in here. I don't know if I would say I'm like this huge fan of fresh tarragon.
It's different. It's not good or bad. It's just different.
Yeah. I'm going to throw some butter in here. He doesn't call for that, but I did. So I just want to give this a quick taste. Interesting. Chicken. He says like arrange this on a platter.
Well, in a deep dish or something, right?
Yeah, but I'm just going straight in to the...
Well, because he didn't have a braiser back then.
He may have.
Was Le Creuset in business back then?
Maybe. I'm going to put our potatoes in here. I don't know. I can't say that it's like a super attractive dish because of the colors. All these green beans and stuff leaves a kind of a drab color to it.
Greens and browns. A lot.
Yeah. Needs a pop of red on top. Some of my potatoes have broken up totally, but it's all good.
It did soak all the butter up though, right?
Yeah. The potatoes are amazing.
They're not excessively greasy.
No. There.
So butter potatoes are good.
Butter potatoes are knocking the socks off of me. Time for a taste. So, Escoffier, this dish was not a complicated dish for a intermediate level home cook. It's just a basic braise. I think what complicates it is having to make that Jus Lie separate. I probably would have just used the chicken stock. I guess they wanted the tarragon flavor in there, but chicken stock butter would have thickened it up. I don't know if I would have necessarily gone through that whole process.
But now that you've made some and it's sitting on the side, you can freeze it or whatever. Next time you want to cook something like this, just pull out the freezer and thaw it out, right?
Yeah. I have to admit that I took a little taste of the potatoes, and they are amazing.
For those with hard of hearing, she said they're amazing.
They're absolutely amazing.
Are you saying Escoffier could open up a potato shack if he really wanted to?
Potato shack.
Yeah.
He could open up a potato shack.
Thank you, boo-boo.
Escoffier's potatoes. Potato world.
Yeah, if they got Shake Shack, they can have Potato Shack.
Potato world. Yeah. I think I wouldn't squish them. Like a lot of people make these melted potatoes and they don't squish them. They just leave them round.
But they also cook them different, though.
Yeah, some of them put a stock in there.
They also don't like to flip them. They just put them in there, cook them, and then put them in the oven. And they don't even touch it. Where he has us flip them quite frequently.
So, Escoffier, here we are. 130 years later.
Oh, no. When did he make this?
1890s, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. The potatoes definitely buttery, if you want to say that. They have in our case, we have a little bit of a crunch to them because of the browning. So there's texture, but they're soft.
The potatoes are rocking them. I don't know. I kind of think maybe we overcooked the chicken, as I see. Because sauteing him and then putting him in the oven, or just overcooked the chicken?
Well, the chicken was only in the oven for 15 minutes.
It didn't taste bad. I'm not dry, super dry, but this is a good dish.
We could almost get rid of using the oven. If you would have left the chicken in the pan a little bit longer, you could have put the peas and the
carrots a little earlier.
Put the beans, put that in there. You could have probably cooked it all in there at the same time.
You can make it one pan.
One pan, yeah.
But the potatoes have to do their own. Put those in your own saucepan.
We had to start the potatoes way early because we knew they were going to take longer. But then I cooked it at a really low temperature, a lot longer than I normally do.
This is a great dish.
Yeah.
This is a winner. Escoffier. Thank you. Our very first cookbook club. I am intimidated as all, you know what. I think part of it is the lack of some specific instruction. I felt like I wanted, Fanny Farmer, I need you, right? Which it might be a good segue from this to do Fanny Farmer next month, right?
You like temperatures and amounts and times. You're used to that.
I would also I really want to do is Peach Melba. He invented Peach Melba, and he would name it after patrons at the restaurant or customers at the restaurant. And he made that for a customer and named it after her. Unfortunately, this time of the year, I can't get fresh peaches. Nowhere. So we may be coming back to Peach Melba as soon as the peaches show up at the store. Oh, wow. This is a great dish. Thanks for joining me.
Mm-hmm.